everyone, and welcome to our third annual Autism Hope Summit. I am so excited about our next speaker. I just think you're going to be woken up, you're going to be motivated, and you're going to be fired up after we talk to him today. His name is Jesse Itzler, and if you haven't heard about him, I don't know where you've been, because he wrote the most amazing book, and you definitely need to pick it up. It's called Living with a Seal. And as us parents know, I feel like as though we're in boot camp every day of our life. And so today we're going to be talking to Jesse Itzler about getting fired up with tips on how to stay motivated and strategies on how not to give up. So welcome, Jesse. Thanks for being here.
That's a great introduction, Kristen. That's a great introduction.
I'm excited. I watch your videos. You know, you just seem like I feel like you got it going on. Like you feel like you figured out the pieces. You're happy. You know, you didn't always have everything easy. You know, you went after your dreams. And I think that's important for families watching this right now to realize we're allowed to go after our dreams. We're allowed to be happy even in the diagnosis of autism. And I know you don't have a child with autism, but as I was saying before the recording, you know, I'm a mom that watches your recordings, and in the morning, you know, sometimes I go through my Instagram and all of a sudden I see you on there, get fired up, and I just start giggling and laughing. And I just think it's a great message for all those families out there that, you know, we are allowed to still be happy. We're still allowed to figure out ways to figure out what we want out of life. So I want to talk a little bit about your background. I find your background so fascinating. To me, it's like the American dream. It really is. It's like you were like, okay, I'm a little kid. This is how I picture it. I'm, you know, sitting there like, I want to be this when I grow up, you know? And then you go after it and do it. All right, I want to do this now. And then you go and do that. And I just love that. Those kind of stories always make me excited and happy. So can we give a little bit of background to people about your success story?
Sure. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. And, you know, I do have that attitude. I think that I still have a lot of my inner 8-year-old in me. And I think that, you know, I like my 8-year-old better than I like my 50-year-old in a way. And I've never lost that. I try not to lose that youthful approach to life, because I just think that it's just a good way to go through it and not take everything so seriously. But I've had a very unconventional journey. I started out in the music business, and actually as a rapper. I was signed to a record label in California, not far from where you are right now, called Delicious Vinyl. And I had right out of college, I was in the music business, and I didn't get picked up for a second album, which was at the time super hard to deal with because that was my whole life, but it ended up being a blessing because it took me on a different course. And from music, and I wore many hats in music, from being an artist to having my own little label that failed to managing talent that didn't go so great. But from music, I started doing theme songs for professional sports teams. And that did catch on and work. And that was a good little niche for me. And I ended up selling that company that did these theme songs and marketing campaigns for sports teams to a company, a big public company. And the owner of the company had a timeshare on a private jet. And he invited my partner and I as guests on his plane. And it was like the scene in The Wizard of Oz when everything goes from black and white to color. When I walked on the plane, I'm like, people fly like this? I want to fly like this. And my partner and I were like, let's start a jet company, private jet company, so we can fly privately. And I was like, definitely, except we had no airplanes. So that made it a little bit hard. But through a couple of meetings where we got kicked out and then got ourselves back in, we were able to create a deal with a company that owned a fleet of planes called NetJets, the biggest fleet of private jets. And we started a company called Marquis Jet, which was a big success. And we ended up selling it to Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's version of NetJets, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company owned by Buffett. And that just started a long trip as an entrepreneur. You know, I've had a couple of successes, many failures. I had a coconut water partnership called Zico, Z-I-C-O, which we sold to Coca-Cola, and wrote a book, as you mentioned. And just, you know, I love newness. I love challenges. I love checking the box and going on to the next thing, as opposed to just, you know, living in a victory and like celebrating it forever and not moving forward. To me, it's like celebrate it short term and then look for the next challenge. And that's sort of how I approach life. Mm-hmm. And my life has always been about building my life resume, more than my business resume. So like I'm an adrenaline freak. I love challenges and newness, and that's what makes me tick.
Well, I read somewhere, I don't know if it was on your Instagram or your Facebook or wherever it was, you were talking about how an average person lives so many days, right? And you're like, I only have most likely this many days left. I got to make the most of it. And I love that. And I actually now when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I think I want to live to be 100 as long as my mind's all normal and everything's great, And I'm like, okay, I only have this many days and I want to make the best of it. And I don't know what those days are,
Yeah.
But I love that way of thinking, especially, I'm a mom of a child with autism. I have the struggles, we go through lots of fun things and non-fun things, and you just kind of shake it all up. I say often it's like an Etch-a-Sketch, right? Like every day I draw a new picture of like, all right, this is going to be the picture of my day. But I love thinking the way you kind of put yourself out there of how many days do we have left and why are we kind of wasting a lot of those days. So how did you get that mindset?
Well, I live with a lot of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I really encourage people to live with urgency because very often we get caught up in our own routines, and routines are great, but routines make the clock go fast, and routines can be a rut. And if you're in your routine and you're so comfortable in your routine, before you know it, you wake up and you're 70. Mm-hmm. And, I just climbed Mount Washington a couple of weeks ago in New Hampshire, and there weren't a lot of 70-year-olds on the mountain. Mm-hmm. So I'm very aware of, as I turn 50, my own mortality and how the window shrinks every day as a percentage of your life. It gets less and less in a greater percentage every single day. And it's true, the average American does live to be 78. If I'm average, I hope we're neighbors at 100 and we can have tea together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But if I'm average, that means I have 28 summers left. And that means that, my 70s probably, I hope they're super active, but they might not be as active as my 40s and 50s were. So then how many relevant years are left? And when you start to like reverse engineer your life, everyone lives forward. What are you doing Christmas? What are you doing New Year's? What are you doing next week? But no one says, all right, 28 years, let's think backwards. The last 10 of them are physically different, right? Your 70s are different than your 40s. So then what's my window? I sleep a third of it. Like you start to engineer it and you're like, whoa, I don't have that. There's not that many productive summers left. Mm-hmm. And when you start living with the attitude of like, well, I'll just do it next year. Mm-hmm. Well, that's super cool. I'm excited about it. Let's schedule it for 2 years from now. Like there's no guarantee about that. So I've always lived my life, ready, fire, aim. Mm-hmm. Ready, fire, aim. Figure it out as you're going. And for me, it's been super fun. But I think, the backstory to that is just being aware of, like you can't cheat time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great way to think about life, especially for those with, dealing with autism and their families. I'm guilty of this, I promise. I remember at least probably the first 5 or 6 years of my son's diagnosis, all I thought was, okay, when he does better, we'll do this. When he can do that, we'll go on our first vacation. And I kept kind of chasing this quote unquote getting better kind of syndrome versus looking at the, child in front of me. He's my son, regardless if he's doing good or not doing good that day. And one day I woke up and I live about 10 minutes from the beach, and people always come to where I live for vacation. And yet here I am not using my own area as quote unquote the vacation. And people would always say, oh, do you go to the beach all the time? Do you do this? And I'd say, gosh, I haven't been to the beach and I don't even know how long. And one day I woke up and I went, oh my gosh, 10 years just went by. And I said, this is not acceptable. And I literally right then, and this is what I think is so great for parents. You don't have to say, okay, I'm going to write a list, and in about 6 months, I'm going to do this. You could change like right now. You could be watching this and go, okay, I'm going to make that change right now. And so I did. I said, we're going to go to the beach at least 2 to 3 times a week, minimum. And even if it was just 20 minutes to do a jog, and if he did great. And if he didn't, that's okay too. And then I decided that I was going to look at my son and still want, obviously, the best for him. But I was also going to appreciate every moment because I thought, oh my gosh, he only has this much childhood left, regardless of what that childhood's going to look like. And I think that your message is so important because, you know, people like you that sit there and remind us like, hey, wake your butt up. You know, what are you doing? We have to do that. We have to remind ourselves that this is all of our lives. It's your life, your family's life, your unit's life, however it looks. So I love that. Now you have something, and I saw this on one of your TED Talks, which I think I've watched it like 4 times now. I laugh every time, by the way. Your intro is awesome, and the way you do stuff is so, like, I feel like I'm right there back in your day, like when you're walking out on stage, you're like, here's the free shirts, here's you got free shirts. Like, if you haven't watched this TED Talk, guys, you have to go find his TED Talk. You will love it. But you talk about something called the happiness meter, and I think that is so key to families to really kind of, you know, look at it in that kind of way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, happiness, I think, it's a decision. I think there's no lid on happiness. Sometimes we put a lid on happiness. I don't think there should be a lid on happiness. It's like a lifestyle and a decision. But I know it was interesting. I was giving a talk to all these super wealthy business owners, and I asked them to put all the buckets of their lives into a blender. Finances, weight, relationships, family, where they work, where they live, everything. Put it in a blender and mix it up. And on a scale of 1 to 10, with the 10 being the happiest you could be, the Dalai Lama of happiness, and a 1 being like rock bottom, what's your number? And I asked everybody that was like a 6 or 7 or 7 or less to stand up. What was interesting was most of the room, and these are highly successful, like take wealth and money concern, which is a huge concern, money and health. I mean, really like your 2 biggest worries potentially. That's off the table. And most of them stood up were a 7 or less. And I explained to them that if my son were to come home with a 70 on a test, that would be a D, or C minus or a D. And this is the most important bucket of their life. So like when you grade, you know, we have a way of grading everything in our life. You know, so many of the key metrics, we have a scale to determine our weight. We have an IQ test. We have tax brackets and financial statements to measure our wealth. But like, how do you really measure your happiness? And what I found from the test is when you do it, so if anyone actually did the exercise, let me take all the buckets of my life, you know, health, family, relationships, money, this, that, put them in a blender, and then you spit it out. The way it works is immediately your brain wants you to be a 10. It wants you to be mega happy. So it starts at a 10 and quickly subtracts the 2 or 3 biggest issues like, oh, my relationship stinks, or I can't stand my boss, or whatever it is. It just pops in your head. You say, oh, I'm an 8. I'm a 6. And whatever popped into your head when you do that test first, the 2 or 3 biggest thoughts, subconsciously they rise right to the top. That's basically what you have to work on. And, you know, we always try to do more time on the things that make us happy. I love watching football. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm going to watch the football game. But we spend very little time trying to fix the things that make us unhappy. So it's just an exercise in identifying first where you are on a 1 to 10, which I think is important. And then put it into like the regular standard grading system. So like if you say you're a 7.5, cool, that's a 75. Like you wouldn't be that happy with a 75 on a test, you know? So then, and then B, identifying what it is that's causing you to be lower out of a 10, and then actually taking action steps to fix it. And many times, I think most people don't even really know without thinking about it. Like they just, cause like, it's like, you don't want to address some of those things, or you delay working on them. And then it just builds up and causes so it's just a way to identify things. And then, yeah, it's on you to create an action plan to attack them head on.
Well, and I think often, and I joke about this even, that when people say, oh, how's your day going? I'm like, every day is Groundhog Day. It's like, if you ever saw that movie Groundhog, Day, it's like you wake up, it's like the same thing over and over. And I think a lot of families watching this, we experience that because we're doing diets and supplements and fighting insurance companies and fighting therapists and whatever else we're fighting. It feels as though it's a constant battle. And so when you get those moments where everything kind of falls into place, well, for me, I kind of hold my breath, and I'm like, all right, nobody breathe. This is great. Let's keep it just like this, but it's obvious that, a lot of us have kind of forgotten who we were. At least I can speak for me. I'm thinking people watching, I imagine you can relate to this. You sometimes forget who you are. You forget that you were somebody before a mother or a wife, or, you forget you had this identity. And so, watching your stuff, I giggle, I laugh, and my inner kid, comes out. I'm very much, I don't think I'm 8, but I feel like I'm 16, and I'm like, I don't know why. I feel like I'm playing Office. When you're a kid, like you play all these different things, except now I have bills, and like they don't think that I'm playing. Like they really want to get paid.
Yeah, they're not playing that game.
So
you're playing against nobody.
Exactly. So, but I feel that way. Like people will say, my son just turned 16 last week, and everyone looks at me. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "I know. I'm only 16 myself. Like, how is this possible? I don't know." And so, but I think when you have a child with autism, it's one of those things where your life kind of pushes pause, and we have to remember to push play. And when we forget to push play, we can kind of get stuck in this rut. And, people say, "Oh, it must be so easy for him. I mean, look, he's so successful. Like, gosh, he doesn't understand." I know lots of families with autism that are super successful. And guess what? Autism they don't care if you're rich, you're poor, you're white, you're black, you're purple, you're green, if you live in London, if you live in Kansas. It happens everywhere. And so what I love is I look at people like you, I look at other families, and I say, you know what? If they can do it, then I can do it. Like to me, like even when I think of Oprah, and I always think of her story, and I say this often, people that know me know I say this, I'm like, gosh, if Oprah can do it, then anybody can, and I say this also, like if I call like a hotel, let's say, they say, "Oh, we're booked up." And I go, "Well, if I was Oprah, would you have a room?" And they said, "Well, of course." I said, "Great, give me her room." So what I love about this is that I want people, because I know one of the things you talk about is thinking outside the box. And I think people really need to realize there's no rules. Somebody made up those rules. So you can remake the rules. And I live my life the best way I can around that, because I think, well, why are people so scared to ask this? Or why are people so scared to ask that? Or who made these rules up? Somebody sat there one day and went, "Okay, this is rule number 1. This is rule number 2. Well, that's silly, like let's rechange this. And what I love about what you talk about, is I love the happiness meter. I love the fired up. To me, where do you get?
You're getting me fired up. I want to go call and make a room reservation as Oprah. I need more tips, Kristen. I need more tips. My 8-year-old and your 16-year-old, I need more of this.
I know, right? Like that's how I feel though. I really do. I feel like anybody can do it.
Well, you have a great attitude. Attitude is free. Mm-hmm. You've chosen to do that. I think things like that are free, energy, attitude, momentum. One thing I try to do every day, and regardless of your circumstances, and I've been doing it, like you said, my dad owned the plumbing supply house. I grew up with no connections into the fields that I got into. I was very fortunate to do this kind of things you're talking about, which is just like figure out a way, and go for it. What was I saying? But I think that the techniques like day in, day out are very similar for regardless of the circumstances, I think. Mm-hmm. And for me, what's been really helpful is I just try to create little wins every day and then use that momentum forward. And I try to get them early in the morning. And that could be something as simple as knocking something off my to-do list, cleaning up my room, doing the laundry, whatever it is. I try to do something so the day starts with like, all right, I'm not playing from behind. Like we all feel overwhelmed. Everybody feels overwhelmed. Everybody, regardless, there's always an exception to the rule, but regardless if you're income level, your circumstances. People feel we live in a busy world. We're bombarded by technology. We get dragged in a million different places. And the two things that I do that really help me are I try to create little wins, and I try to free up as much energy in my head as possible. So that means taking, we only have a certain capacity. If I'm filling it up with my to-do lists and little things that are just constantly coming after me or requests, I have no energy to be creative, to think clearly, to take a deep breath and look at my circumstances or whatever. I just take everything, and I have this is a 3-year-old method, but I have like a 3-year-old to do this. I put everything down in one journal. It's like a running list of pages, and anything and everything, I get it out of my head. Because once it's out of my head, it doesn't mean it's done, but I don't have to think about it. It lives somewhere. I don't have to use energy to remember it or whatever. And then I break that list down daily into like, what are the top 3 to 5 things in each bucket of my life that I have to attack. And what it does is it allows me to have room to be creative and to look at, because it's very hard to think clearly when you're overwhelmed. And you start to spiral, and then you make bad decisions. And then once you go down, it's hard to get out of that space. But so I try not to allow myself, and there are days where I do, but to get there. So I create wins. I have a great attitude. I try to, just like you, I try to get all my thoughts down on paper so I'm not clogged and blocked. I try to get outside. I try to have a great support system around me of people that, I can really count on to keep me positive. I'm on friend reduction. Like, if you're not on the same mission, if we're not aligned, and you're going to tell me how I can't do this or how bad this is or whatever, it's like, okay, let me.
I love that.
So I'm on a little bit of a reduction right now. And I listen to my intuition. And the way that I listen to my intuition is I spend time alone, so I'm in tune with my gut because I get to be a little quiet. For me, that's been running. That's been my vehicle to get my alone time. People meditate, people do whatever, but I think it's really hard to think clearly when you're constantly bombarded and, with people, information, blogs, texts, beeps, buzzes. I don't need to know that my friend's having a corona on a beach in Mexico. And then feel like he or she's gonna get mad I didn't like that. Or I did like it, and then they're responding. Now I'm in a chain about them drinking in Mexico. How's that going to make my life better?
I love that. That's so true.
No, but it's true. So once you get a little bit of alone time, okay, I'm going to focus my energy on things that move the needle. And as you get older and you get into the 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter of your life, I'm turning 50. It's not like when you're young, the consequences. It's you don't really care so much about the consequences. You're young. You'll get back on your feet. You can make moves. You can adjust to it. As you get older, it's harder to do that. And so I find myself wanting to spend, it's very simple, as much time with the people that matter most doing the things I like to do. And that's kind of how I choose to live my life, which is a choice. And it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with anything. Regardless of, like you said, black, white, rich, poor, healthy, unhealthy. It's who do you want to spend your time with? And you want to put as much of that on your plate, doing the things that you like to do the best. That's a great blueprint for life.
And it sounds so easy, and yet people have such a hard time with it, and we talk about this a lot in the autism community. Surround yourself with people that believe in you, believe in your kid, and if they don't, fire them or get away from them. And I love the friend reduction. That's awesome. I think you should definitely write a chapter on that, because that's
well, I don't know if some of my friends would appreciate it, but yeah,
I love that. And I think for families watching, first of all, I could talk to you all day long because you have fired me up, and
we're good.
You have been doing awesome.
I'm learning more from you, Kristen.
No,
you're a good audience. You laugh a lot.
I do laugh.
You're a great audience. Who doesn't like a good audience?
It's funny. The other day,
Kristen. See?
Well, it's funny. Someone the other day, I don't know who it was, some mom messaged me on Instagram, and I don't really ever check those messages. And I happened to check it. And I was at a longevity conference as a participant. And I was just in the audience. And she says, I hear this laugh. She goes, this blogger was blogging. And I wasn't there for anything other than just me, you know. She goes, is this your laugh? And you can see me, my back of my head. And I'm like, oh, oh. It was my laugh. I thought, oh my goodness, I have a distinctive laugh.
You do. It's good.
But I thought, you know, if I die one day and people say, you know what, she had a great laugh, then I think that I did my part on this earth. And if that's what I'm remembered for, then I'm totally okay with that. But
maybe you should make an app like Kristen's Laugh app.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and it's a fundraiser, and then you just push the button, and you start to laugh.
Oh gosh, that'd be so awesome.
And then everybody feels good.
That would be so cool.
Save a lot of money on therapy.
There you go, right? It's a multi-million-dollar idea right there. I have so enjoyed talking with you. I know everybody just loved watching this. And, you know, guys, if you loved watching Jesse and you want to have Jesse in your living room every day, all you have to do is go to autismhopesummit.com. You can buy the whole summit. And that way, let's say your significant other didn't get to watch. Maybe you wanted your mom and dad or your friend. It's perfect. You can own the whole summit and watch it anytime you want. And here's the coolest part. Every time you buy the summit, it helps raise dollars for the Autism Hope Alliance, which goes back into our nutritional scholarship fund. So to me, it's a win-win. So I have so loved talking with you, Jesse. I definitely get a kick out of you. I love your Instagrams. Keep it coming, making me laugh every day. And what message do you want to leave families that might be watching?
You know, I just want to say something first, because you just talked about a win-win.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to a group today about win-wins, and very often people use the term win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And like a win-win is great. I'm creating something for you. You're creating something back for me. But sometimes people interpret a win-win to be like, well, am I giving more to you than you're giving to me? And then like, now it's not a win-win. It's like a win-win.
Yeah.
A win-win.
Yeah.
And what you've really created is a no-lose.
Oh, I love that.
You've created a no-lose. It's like, it's not everybody wins. It's like, you can't lose supporting a cause like this. There's no way you buy the Summit series. Like, it's not even a win-win. It's a no-lose. And there's nothing, only good can happen. Only good can happen. You can help families and this and that. And that's a no-lose situation. So, I love everything that you guys do, and I appreciate you being here. And, you know, I just, you are a great example. And I think my message would be like, you know, you have a great attitude. Again, that's free. You're super courageous. You've chosen to live your life, you know, amazing. Well, obviously your son means so much to you. He's turning 16, and clearly you have a great relationship. And I just think that when you see people that live a way that's admirable, and they don't have to be Oprah, you know, those are people I'm drawn to and I learn from, and I want to be around. And you have that kind of energy. So I think, you know, just what you're doing here with everybody is a great, you know, it's a great thing. And on summits like this, where you have guests, if there's one piece of information, one nugget, one way that you look at something different, just one thing that helps, you know, you get one of those a week, you get 52 lessons. You do that for 10 years, you have 500 lessons.
Wow.
And, you know, it's all cumulative. Everything is cumulative. And over time, and that's why I invest so much in going to conferences and watching and listening to people like you. So I think for those listening, you know, it's just like, what's the nugget? What's the one or two pieces? It could be a smile. It could be your laugh. It could be you're a good audience. It could be something you don't even expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like the message isn't always in the, here's takeaway 1, here's takeaway 2, here's takeaway 3. We've heard those a million times.
Mm-hmm.
It's in how people live their lives, very often in just mannerisms, interactions, or whatever. And to me, that's it's infectious, and that's the interesting piece. So I appreciate you having me. Proud to be part of the summit, and great to have gotten to know you.
Definitely. And thank you so much, Jesse. And again, thanks for all of your encouraging words. And again, thank you for keeping us laughing and keeping us positive, because we need all the
there it is again.
we need all the laughter we can get. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Bye, guys.